Particularly, I would say local and feminine go together. Local is where I stand, the community to which I belong. I'm rooted like a tree has roots in the soil. We have our roots in the community. If the soil is not good, if the roots are not good, a tree cannot have branches and the leaves and blossoms and fruit and all that. So we need to be rooted in our community where we are. To practice spirituality, compassion, kindness, and feminine principles, you need feminine and you need local. In India, we say the feminine principle is receptivity. Receptivity is the feminine, and expressiveness is the masculine. In our body, men and women all have listening, so that's receptivity, and speaking, that's expressiveness. But all of us have 2 ears and 1 mouth. And so our formula is F2M. 2 parts feminine, 1 part masculine. Like you have water H2O, you have F2M. So all men and all women need to cultivate both principles, feminine and masculine, but a bit more feminine than masculine.
You must please take this with you and share it with other people. We need basic economic literacy. The measure of growth increases if you get serious cancer and need chemotherapy for many years. If you go home tonight and all of you had things stolen in your house and you have to go out and buy new, that's good for GDP. If you choose to grow a garden, stay healthy, that's bad for GDP. You're unpatriotic. So this is a central theme that we in various ways will be sharing tonight. And we are not only sharing a big picture of how that dominant economic system, which is spreading worldwide, is so out of touch with life, but we are also sharing a picture of how people all around the planet are either intuitively or quite consciously or traditionally turning towards the land, supporting community, protecting community, and the turning towards nature, towards community, takes many forms. We find it now quite strange that people can't understand that something like home birth or even death doula work, it's all part of a great turning towards the local, towards the feminine, towards community. And you'll see that my women colleagues here from around the world are looking at what's happening in the world from quite different specialities and places, obviously, but we all share this big picture. And we really hope to be able to spread that big picture because it has an amazing ability to link us instead of dividing us. Once we become more economically literate and we look at what's happening because of the economy, and it's the global economy, we'll understand that those social media algorithms that literally are looking for you, where you and I disagree, in order to extract wealth into a global, what is ultimately a type of corporate empire that's operating like a machine. Once we realize that, and we realize that most people are getting poorer, the most important message I really believe to bring this really strong and powerful movement together is to emphasize that people are being impoverished. Don't buy into language that demonizes human nature. Don't just talk about the Anthropocene. Don't talk about anthropogenic. Let's talk about econometric, techno-econometric global system that is driving poverty, climate emissions, destruction of biodiversity, and let's talk about the decentralizing, small is beautiful, slow is beautiful path that we must help to strengthen, and that is already emerging all across the world.
We are discussing tonight feminine futures on the plural, no? And my question to you is today, who owns the future trademark? No? What we call today, so currently in our everyday conversations, and we hear on the news and we read on the newspapers or social media, decarbonization, our decarbonization journey, our moving towards low carbon society, even post-carbon society, actually hides a much wider process than just phasing out fossil fuels. The transition that is going on is a major re-engineering of the world economy that has never been done before. And it's not only how we account, how we give value to the so-called natural capital. To coordinate all the surveillance and monitor of every molecule of carbon on planet Earth, it's impossible at the human scale. So you need to bring a massive global technology, a massive global new constellation of satellites, of drones, of sensors, and of full electrification. This electrification that is foreseen is not to reduce energy demand cutting out fossil fuels. Much on the contrary, is increasing wildly the demand for energy to power data centers. It's hydrogen, it's nuclear, it's small modular nuclear reactors. It's all kinds of new different ways of producing energy using rare earth, using very precious minerals that require tons of earth revolved and spoiled to produce it. And this is going to be written in this new regime, this blockchain regime. At this critical juncture in history that we are towards walking, blinded, the majority, I think, towards a full totalitarian digital regime. None of this is appropriate technology. None of this is a human scale technology. And I fully believe history is pregnant with futures, not the future trademark. And I do not want to spend my next years discussing what the UN is proposing now. That the new paradigm after the Agenda 2030 is achieved is a space exploration for development, is to conquer the space, because this is what is going to move humanity forward. Because patents that will come out of health in space are going to cure everything. That the science to produce food in space stations is what's going to end with the world hunger. So I think we need desperately to build a movement that affirms the right to be human and to be human on planet Earth. I don't want to go to space. I don't want to see what's going on Mars. I want to recover and reclaim the land and the earth. We are in a war, a hybrid war for our mind. So the battleground can be Ukraine, can be the Gaza, but it's beyond that. It's our very conquered territory of mind, of imagination, and how we are being played with military technology and with military purposes on an everyday basis.
I'm going to talk a bit about rebuilding our food system. So I'm going to kind of pick up on what you finished off with, Camila, which was reclaiming the land and the earth. And of course, there is no better way of doing that than through our food system. Okay. And I think there's also maybe no clearer place to see the madness of the global economy in the food that we need 3 times a day, yet most of us on this planet Earth are totally divorced from our food system and know nothing about how it came there, where it came from, where it's made. That's the reality for the majority of people. And it was also my reality when I was young. When I was 14, I was fortunate enough to have an encounter with some people that lived on the land, grew their own food, had water outside the door, and it was like someone ripped the curtain to one side and I could see, you know, what the world was made of. Aside from free trade, which basically deregulates companies so they can move around the planet and set up shop where there are no environmental standards or where people don't get paid well, and they also get huge subsidies. So when we talk about welfare, we should be talking about corporate welfare, because that's where the money goes. $7 trillion to the fossil fuel industries, $1 million per minute globally to industrial agriculture. How much does go to the small farmers, the regenerative farmers, the organic farmers? 1%. Now, why do we have cheaper industrial food then? It's quite obvious. Because we all pay for it by taxpayers' money. So it's not a level playing field, and we are supporting the wrong thing. The local food movement, I would say, is leading the way across the world for a broader process of economic localization that also involves renewable energy, community housing, affordable housing, environmental healing, personal healing, community building. And the beautiful thing about it is that we can all participate, we can all find a way in. And really, the most important thing for us to fix is our own food sovereignty. We're not going to survive many days relying on food from the other side of the world.
We need to unlearn most of what we learned about life, right? And unlearn most of what we learned in our educational system, right? Because I feel that our educational system is a process of domestication and colonizations of our lives, not only our minds, mainly our minds, but of our lives, of how we should live, and the single story of success. That you should go through the educational system, be the best student that you can, get the best job that you can in the corporate world or in our government, and get yourself lots of money, have a nice big house, good cars, best of clothes, and all these desires, these artificial desires that are brought upon us. Being an activist is believing on what's good for you and good for the world and good for the earth, and having the strength of bringing that forth. And I know it's not easy most of the time because we have resistance from the system, right? When we bring these ideas. Helena has felt much resistance when talking about the corporate world, right? Most of the green movement, sustainable movement, don't want to talk about what's happening in economy or the corporate world, because then when is the money coming from? So we have to work with them, right? So I urge us to be bold, and to speak our hearts, and to talk to people around us with love, with our feminine sides, so that we can bring them towards this future that we're building together, this feminine future, this local future, this ecological future, so that they see the beauty that lies in it, that they see the wrongs we have made within the system, and looking towards Asian societies, indigenous societies, as inspiration for us to, as they said, not go back to villages, but find ways of living that are more connected to the land. Let's not forget the local action and advocating with activism for the bigger picture, what we're calling here, which is this big economic system. Go there and compass with your sensing, with your body, and feel the importance of it. Share it with your community, and have intuitions about land connection, ceremony, spirituality around it all. Because this is the only way that we're going to feel whole, the wholeness of the human experience in this earth. And that won't happen if we don't advocate for it, if we don't ask for it to happen, and if we don't grab it with our hands, and if we don't name what's wrong. And I think this is the beauty of Local Futures work.
Looking back along the timelines since I was a new specialist, it's happened a lot. Already then, I was expected to prescribe drugs to young people. But the way it has escalated and the way things have changed during those 30 years are quite remarkable. We used to think about mental health issues in children as something that was biopsychosocial, something that had to do with the context that we were growing up in. And that is almost completely gone now. And what has happened is that there's been a kind of hijacking so that we have diagnostic manuals where we have symptom criteria to bring different levels of suffering. For instance, if I have a low mood, if I'm irritable, if I have difficulty sleeping, we have lists to check off that this is symptoms of a disorder or a disease. So human suffering has been completely medicalized, and there is a huge jump from having mental suffering, which may be a very normal and adequate reaction to what's going on in the world after all that we have heard. Instead of blaming the individual and putting it back onto the individual and saying, you have a disorder, what is wrong with you, how can we fix you, here's your medication. And the reason this has been my way into big picture activism, because this is not a few kids. This is huge parts of our population globally. This is a way to empower and taking young people from passive, dissociative and depressed state into engaging in a future that's worth living for. And I think this doesn't have to happen only within psychiatry, of course. We all can participate. We all can create those safe spaces to name the problem, to learn together about actually what's going on, and to support each other to actually feel what's happening and come back into our embodied space. These are practices that need to be localized. They need to be done together around the fire, ideally. And we need to bring them with us on the inside remind ourselves of this deep memory, because it's actually remembering who we are and do we have been. All these people coming before us have had these practices, and they are taken away from us because those things that we have heard about. So we need to reclaim them. We need to reclaim space, safe space, inside and together.
I always like to start with, what's our heritage? What's the vision? Where are we going? Where do we want to be? And the Evolved Nest is an insight from across disciplines that I think helps us understand that and helps us renew our commitment to being fully human. Indigenous science is open to everything. There's no error. Western science, oh, well, that didn't fit my theory, so that's just error. We're not going to deal with it. There's no error. It's all, and everything's alive. And you need to use your observational skills to really understand the world and not just go in with some model that you're going to test, because sure, you're going to confirm your belief. We know all that, right?
When we look at the word love from an Indigenous paradigm, love means that which takes you back to the cosmic order. Love means that which takes you back to truth. Love means that which takes you into interdependence, interconnectedness, and interrelatedness. Love means that which takes you into harmony. And love in this context is what we call Ubuntu. This cyclone, this circularity, also reminded us of a principle called Sankofa. Sankofa is a principle from the Akan people of Ghana, which tells us that if we're truly to enter the future, we have to feed that future into the past, remember that which we've forgotten, and feed it down into the present. And only when we have the cycle between the past, the present, and the future, feeding the future into the past, can we create a future that is greater than the one that we have today. And so when we look at Sankofa from beyond the anthropocentric view, we actually realize that Sankofa is the universal principle of feedback that is found in all sorts of systems. And this feedback system, these feedback loops are forgotten in many of the linear ways in which we seek to operate life today. And so Sankofa reminds us about ancient futures. It reminds us about local futures. It reminds us that the return to the feminine futures means following
following cycles, following the serpentine. It reminds us that we need to follow the way of the river. It reminds us that we need to follow Idai, an injunction to love. And as my sister spoke of the Sand People, one thing that the Sand People always say is that a dream is not a dream until it is shared. Let us share that dream together.